Hello and welcome to another book review video. Today is one that I was targeted by the marketing for it when it first came out in about 2021. I ended up adding it to my Goodreads wishlist and then forgetting completely all about it. Until a few months ago when I was yet again targeted by the special edition of this book, which was released by Fairy Loot. And this time it got me. This time the marketing got me because I ordered it. And that being Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. I mean, how could I not? I mean, look at it. But the first bit of this cover is the original cover, which I'll show up there. And that's the one that got me interested. This is pretty. Now this story opens in a misty graveyard, and our main character Artemisia is looking for solitude. She's a bit of a loner, she likes to keep to herself, and she feels more at home with the dead than with the living. But her solitude is broken before she even gets there, because on the ground in the grass she finds an abandoned incense holder, and the sisters use the incense holder to ward off and do battle with dark spirits. And this particular incense holder belongs to a girl named Sophia, and she's about 9 or 10 years old. So really she's just a child and she's still in training to battle these spirits, and you don't just abandon this incense holder. So immediately her hackles go up. There's something wrong. So Artemisia goes in search of Sophia, and it leads her to a hole in the wall of the crypt. And she goes into this crypt, and she finds Sophia cowering in a corner, being terrorised by a dark, malevolent spirit, in which Artemisia has to do battle with to make it stop. And this is all in the first chapter. So this isn't going to have any spoilers in it. This event all happens in the first chapter. And that is our introduction to our main character, Artemisia. They've got to have long, complicated names, it's fantasy. And Artemisia is a Grey Sister. And the Grey Sisters take care of the dead. So they do all the rites, they get them ready for passing on, they make sure their spirit is released to go where it should do. But there is something different about this order, because all the Grey Sisters possess at least some level of sight or magic. Now Artemisia in particular, she was possessed by nearly all of her childhood by a dark, malevolent spirit. And as such, she was imprisoned by her family and left to rot, sort of in a shed, I think. And she's chained and abused, and she's just neglected and just left to go mad and just really die, so because they don't know what to do with her. And she was rescued by the Grey Sisters, or the Reverend Mother at that time, who hears the cry of her soul and goes to rescue her and bring her back to the priory to perform an exorcism. Now, I mentioned that for a few of these, all of the nuns possess some magic or sight. Now, a few of them can interact with relics, and relics are where trapped spirits are in pieces of usually jewellery, gemstones. It can be spirited boxes or pieces of wood or fingers, or something like that, like a saint's relic. And these relics speak to whoever is in possession of them. And not everybody can interact with relics. Some of them they're just normal everyday items to most people. But to our character, Artemisia, these relics speak to her. But not only speak to her, they can interact with her, and she can interact with them. And not only that, but she can resist their power and their pull, and she can manipulate them to work for her to a certain degree. But the world in which she inhabits is rapidly changing. So some years prior, the Raven King died in his attempt to harness the power of the dead in order to become immortal. as most of these sort of kings tend to do. But in doing that, in trying to become immortal, he inadvertently breaks down the barrier between the living and the dead are bleeding into the world and devouring anything they come across. Now, when the dead come to the gates of the priory, which they eventually do, this all happens in the very first few chapters, so there's no spoilers for the whole book. And Artemisia can no longer hide herself away from the world and be around the dead, which is where she wants to be. The dead, not the living dead. And she ends up having to harness the power of a high relic, which is kept in the crypt of the priory. And in doing so, she opens up her mind and her body into being possessed by the spirit of a revenant. Now, a revenant is the highest spirit, the most powerful, the most destructive that you can go in the hierarchy. And this is one of them. Because after all, the title Vespertine is a high priestess who can wield the power of a high relic. In these dark times when the dead are devouring the world and everyone in it, a Vespertine is sorely needed. And after this, Artemisia has to travel. She gets kidnapped, she gets taken because she has power. And she hasn't been trained how to use it. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's just hoping, and she is trying to have faith in a world that is rapidly losing it in everything. Now, I really, really liked this book. I loved reading it. I don't know why I've put it off for so long. I really, really liked it. And I found in writing this review that the author actually describes it as medieval venom with nuns and ghosts. And that is the most apt description anywhere. It's so much fun. I enjoyed reading it so much. There isn't one thing that I really didn't like about it. If anything, I wanted more of the world in it. I wanted to explore more of what we get to find. Now, this is a young adult fantasy and it doesn't read like one. I think it's only classed as young adult because the main character of Artemisia is, I think she's about 18, 19. That's it. Everything else wouldn't scream to me young adult at all. The character of Artemisia, she's compelling, she's funny, she's charismatic, and you find bits woven throughout the story, little snippets, little insights of why she is the way she is and why she prefers to be on her own. Now, as strange as it sounds, the Revenant is my favourite character in this book. He is by far just the making of this story. I really enjoyed the parts where we're not in his head. It's all in first person of Artemisia, but because he is in her head, you get little snippets and little flashes of his personality. And he is so snarky, and he is just tired of everyone's bullshit that he's had to put up with for centuries. He's just done and doesn't care. He just doesn't care if the world burns, as long as he can, get off a few wisecracks while it does. And the way that these two characters grow is so believable in the timescales that it does. So with it being a young adult, usually you turn a page and, oh my god, everybody's friends. This doesn't happen with this. It's natural. It feels natural, the way that their characters progress and the way that they interact together. Their mutual distrust of each other and their growing friendship is everything. It's the perfect blend of dislike, exasperation. You defend each other's character, but you annoy them on purpose yourself, and they are near constantly bickering with each other all the way through. But it's snarky on both sides, humorous and fun. The whole world building is so big and intricate, but it's not dumped on the reader right at the beginning. Like, you get to learn. I mean, the character that you're whose head you're in already knows most of this history, but you get to learn as she's recapping some of it throughout the book. Now, as you might guess, with nuns, priests, demons, etc., religion is a very big part of this book, and it does take elements from Christianity, but not so much that you would think, because I'm not religious, why should I read this? It takes elements from it, but it's not all that it is. We inhabit the world where saints aren't just some relic of a dusty bygone era. They are alive, and this is before or during the deeds which elevated them to that point in the first place, and whether everything with those stories is as it actually happened. So for me, this book gets 4 stars. It doesn't get the 5 simply because there were bits that I thought it could have improved on, mainly near the end. I think it dragged itself out a bit. I liked that the characters were grey. Sometimes you thought people as good, only to find out they were bad, and then just to find out that they were good, and then just to find out that they were bad. You never really knew who was who and which side you could really trust, or whose narrative you were supposed to believe. So I really, really liked this book. I would recommend it to anyone. And if you've read this book, please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, keep reading.